Hello everyone and welcome back to Wordfence Live. Plugins are the backbone of your WordPress website, providing more functionality and in many cases optimizing the performance of your WordPress website. We're often asked which plugins that we recommend here at Wordfence, so today we're going to take a look at the top plugins in several categories spanning from security, SEO, contact form plugins, and more, and tell you what you should look for before deciding on the next plugin for your website. Stay tuned. We'll be right back to get started. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Wordfence Live. As experts in the WordPress security space, our team here at Wordfence works with new plugins just about every day, whether we're reviewing changes to plugin code, looking for vulnerabilities, working on a firewall rule for a vulnerability in a plugin to protect our Wordfence users, or working with a customer on a plugin conflict and support. We're always spending time with new plugins. So WordPress users often ask us for plugin recommendations across a number of different categories. So today we'll be looking at 8 different categories that plugins may fall into, and we're going to be providing some insight on what to look for when searching for the next plugin for your site, no matter what you're going to be trying to do. So if you're interested in this content, please be sure to like the video, use the thumbs up below the video here. You can also hit the subscribe and the bell button to be notified when we go live or when we post a new video to YouTube. We post videos here and there, so you're not going to be overwhelmed with alerts, and we go live each Tuesday at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Let's get right into it and bring in our threat analysts, Ram Gall and Chloe Chamberlain. We're going to talk all about plugins today. Ram, how's it going over there?
It's going. We've been having some nice monsoon weather, so yeah, it's been very rainy.
How about you, Chloe? What's up over there?
Yeah, it's good. It's cooling down, so I'm enjoying that and hoping it gets colder.
So we're going to start with the basics here with what is a plugin, but before we do that, let's start with something even better, and that is the swag question. So you're going to see the link in the chat here. You can answer directly in that link, and if you're one of the first 5, you will win the swag. The question for today is, what type of plugin is Wordfence? And we're going to be covering a number of different kinds of plugins today. It's going to be important to distinguish the differences there and see what you need specifically on your site. You might not need all of them, and sometimes less is more, and we'll go over that quite a bit today. So without further ado, Chloe, what do you think? Let's dive in with the basics here and start with what is a plugin?
Yeah, so to get started, let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. So when you first install WordPress, it's just WordPress. There's nothing else on it. Sometimes it comes with a theme and a plugin or two, depends on where you install it from. But in WordPress itself doesn't really come with anything. So what you do is that you find plugins to enhance your WordPress site. So for example, by default, WordPress core, what you install, this WordPress dashboard and everything, doesn't include, security by default. It doesn't include a contact form by default. It doesn't include SEO tools by default. I would say it doesn't include a page builder by default, but Gutenberg is now incorporated into it, so it does kind of have its own page builder now. And so there's all these different things that WordPress doesn't come with at default that you install by using plugins. And so the easiest way to explain what a plugin is think about your cell phone, for example. You have just a cell phone that makes calls and text messages and just basic things, and you can install a plugin like Twitter to be able to tweet directly from your phone. And it's kind of the same thing with WordPress and plugins, is that you have your WordPress site blank in default. All you can do is publish and some other things, of course, but the main purpose is to publish on the web. And then you install plugins to enhance that, to be able to have people contact you through your site, to be able to host e-learning content on your site and things like that. So that's kind of what a plugin is and where it comes in to WordPress. And so when you first install WordPress, you just kind of have this dashboard. You don't really have much here. And so the easiest way to go install a plugin, well, the only well, technically you can install it from the back end. However, we're not going to get into that. But the way to install a plugin is you go to the plugins tab over here, and you see right here is typically a list of all your installed plugins. I'll show you that after we've installed our first plugin. But what you do is you click add new, and then we'll search for Wordfence, for example. You can search any plugin keywords, authors, tags, anything, and you can find a plugin right here in your dashboard. And so it's super easy to install a plugin. All you do is click install now. And then as soon as that's installed, you click activate, and we'll just wait for it for a moment. However, while that's installing, I want to go ahead and show you just real quick what a plugin looks like on the back end, because you might be curious, what you're adding to your site. And so what you can do is you can pick any plugin, and then you can go to development, and you can click on browse the code. And so basically, a WordPress plugin is a bundle of code that is being installed and added to your site. And so if you're just curious what it looks like on the back end, I recommend going to check that out. However, it's nothing you really need to concern yourself with. It's just for fun if you want to do that. And so now that that's installed, you can activate the plugin. And to explain this real quick is when you install the plugin, it gets installed on your site and it's not activated as soon as you install it. So basically the features of that plugin are not active until you click activate. And then I have to enter an email for this one, continue, and I don't want to do this. And so now you can see that this installed plugin is right here. And so another thing to keep in mind is, why would you want to install a plugin? Well, like I said before, WordPress is kind of a blank canvas to start, and installing plugins is an easy way for you to enhance your site with minimal time, minimal money. The ones on the WordPress repository are all free, so you don't have to pay for those. You can pay for plugins if you want. However, there's over 50,000 plugins in the WordPress repository, so I'm sure you can find one for free that works for you. And yeah, so I think that about covers what exactly a plugin is, Bram. And Scott, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that some plugins might have additional premium functionality where if you like the free version and the capability it offers, you can also pay to upgrade to a full featured version that gives you additional features. Like with WordFence, we'll give you firewall rules and malware signatures right away instead of after 30 days, or we'll add the real-time block list where we'll block IPs that have been attacking other people's sites. But different plugins will have different pro features as well. So
Yeah, and if you really love a plugin and it's something that you're going to put a lot of time into changing your whole site with it, maybe certain e-commerce plugins or WordFence or another plugin, you also a lot of the times will get premium support. So if you need help with those changes, if you're new to WordPress or maybe you're just new to this whole thing, premium support seems to be one of the things that you're going to get with some of those plugins. But that'll be something that we'll take a look at along the line here, support and just some other things that you're going to want to take a look at. Chloe, now's probably a good time. What are we going to take a look at today?
Yeah, so we're not going to go through all these categories. However, some of the top plugin categories that you might encounter and might need to take a look at when you're looking for plugins to install on your site are going to be security plugins, so like Wordfence. It's nice to have one of these to add two-factor authentication to your site, all that good stuff. Then you have SEO plugins. This is going to help your site rank better in search engines and such. So that's a plugin category that you might be looking out for. Contact form is another one that you'll be keeping your eye out for most likely. Most sites are going to have a contact form, whether it be e-commerce, just a personal blog, just a way for someone to contact you if they need support or have a question. Backup plugins. If your hosting provider doesn't provide a way for you to back up, you're likely going to take a look at backup plugins and figuring out one that's going to suit your needs. Caching plugins are another top category that you might spend time looking for. That's going to help improve the speed of your site, the way it loads and everything. And then you have e-commerce. That's another category you might look at. You're most likely going to default to WooCommerce if you're planning an e-commerce site. However, you can look at the other options if you want to. That's always available. And then membership e-learning plugins, if you want to, provide content, things like that you want to restrict, or you want to host educational series, you might be looking at those types of plugins. And then page builders are the last type of plugin category that you might be looking at. However, I'm going to say that I would recommend, if you're new to WordPress, stay away from page builder plugins and work with the block editor and such, and because page builder plugins often have vulnerabilities. So that's one that you might be looking at, but I'm going to tell you that you should try not to look at.
Couple
And
good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chloe.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say a couple good comments already. Michael mentions that premium or donations help keep a plugin and keep plugin authors and developers maintaining their ware. So that's one thing, here with Wordfence, our premium subscribers allow us to do this. It helps with Chloe and Ram and the rest of our threat intel team to be able to, dive into all of these plugins and get fixes out and protection out for our premium subscribers. Also, Dogwomble mentions that it's worth mentioning, if you have a plugin that just sits there inactive most of the time, might be worth considering removing it until you need it. Chloe, that's something we've seen, right? When we release firewall rules, sometimes it's better to just have these off the site if you only use them occasionally.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend, uninstalling plugins you don't use at all. Don't leave those around, because, sometimes there's vulnerabilities that allow inactive plugins to be exploited. And then there's, for example, the file manager plugin. If you don't use that every day, I would recommend, not leaving it there active every day, because there was a vulnerability in it, for example. So for utility plugins like that, just use it and then uninstall it, because that's the best course of action. You can always install it again later if you need it. It's better not to leave things around, because when you leave things around, you're increasing your attack surface, and you want to reduce that. So make sure that unused plugins are removed.
So where do you want to start here, Chloe? Throughout the show, we're going to be talking about some things to keep in mind, right? Whenever you're going through the plugin installation process, when you're looking for plugins in these and other categories, all of this is going to translate for pretty much any plugin that you're downloading, right? You want to take a look at a number of different things.
Yep, for sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a couple examples of picking out plugins, so that you can take this method and apply it to any plugin out there on the repository and make decisions for your site. And so the top things to keep in mind when choosing the right plugin are going to be the features of the plugin, what's going to work for your site, what you need for your site, the support standard. If you are anticipating requiring support for a plugin, make sure that they're responsive and that you will be able to get the support you need in the future. You want to take a look at install count, because higher install counts could mean more eyes looking at the plugin. So something with 1 million installs might mean that there's 100,000 developers looking at that plugin, finding bugs, finding vulnerabilities, things like that. So you have more eyes looking. The last updated date is important. How long ago was the plugin updated? If it's older than 1 year, then you might want to pick a different plugin, because that could mean that the plugin is abandoned and you don't want to use that. Another thing to look out for is security, the security of the plugin. How many vulnerabilities were reported in the past, and just making sure that they were remediated and remediated quickly. And then take a look at the reviews. What did the customers say about the product? And then how bloated is the plugin? That kind of ties into the features of the plugin. So make sure that you're not installing something that has significantly more than what you actually need, because then you're increasing your attack surface. So now let's go ahead and take what I've just told you and apply it to picking out a contact form plugin. So you are more than likely going to have a contact form on your site. So what this does is it enables a way for a customer to contact you in the event that you have a WooCommerce or an e-commerce site, and you are selling products and you need someone to contact you. If you sell a plugin on your site, for example, and you need someone to contact you for support, you may need a contact form plugin. So this is one of the crucial plugins. You're more than likely going to need it when you set up your WordPress site. And so let me go ahead and get my screen all ready for you. And so we're going to basically apply what I just told you and pick out a contact form plugin. So what we'll do is we'll go over to the plugins directory, and this is a way to browse 58,617 free plugins.
That's a very specific number. Wow.
Yes. And so this is the homepage for the plugins page or the plugins repository. It's wordpress.org/plugins. And what you can do is you can scroll down here just to check it out real quick. Block enabled plugins. So these are ones that make block editing easier and enhance the features of the block editor. You have featured plugins. These are some of the most popular plugins out there. Beta plugins. These are like new ones being developed and in beta, so testing. And then popular plugins again. And so what you want to do, and let's say we're looking for a contact form plugin. You want to search contact form, and you'll have a list of all these different contact form plugins available for you to download. So just scroll down and just take a look at all these real quick. There's 49 pages. Not all of these are contact form plugins per se. However, a lot of them will enhance contact forms. So today we're going to focus on the top 4 results, and that's going to be Contact Form 7, Contact Form by WP Forms, Forminator, and Ninja Forms. So I'll go ahead and open all 4 of these. And the way you can choose a plugin that's best for your site is you can kind of go through process of elimination. So you can go through those criteria and eliminate forms or eliminate plugins based on those criteria. So for example, let's say you want just the simplest contact form for your site. You can eliminate everything and just go with Contact Form 7. It's going to be the simplest contact form for you. However, for the sake of today, we're not going to go with the simplest. We're going to say that we want something that has, more user-friendly features, easier to maneuver and add customization and such. So in theory, we would eliminate Contact Form 7 because it's not as beginner and user-friendly, I would say. However, it is simpler. But let's go ahead and start going through the criteria here. So the first thing we'll want to take a look at is the last updated date. This one has a last updated date of 2 weeks ago. This one by WP Forms has a last updated date of 6 days ago.
Now, what kind of cutoff are you looking at there, Chloe, for something that you're just not going to consider for a bigger plugin like this? Is it outside of 5 months or a year?
A year, I would say, is you would probably consider that abandoned. So if it says last updated 1 year, it's likely an abandoned plugin and you wouldn't want to install that on your site because that means it's not being maintained. And so that means if a security vulnerability is found, it's probably going to take longer for it to get resolved if it ever gets resolved. So you want to go with last updated, sooner rather than later. So after a year, I would kind of just avoid looking at those. But if it's within, 1 month to 12 months, just kind of assess it, see if it needed updates, I guess. Do you have a way to explain that better than I'm
Okay, so here's the thing. You see how it says tested up to version? Every time a new version of WordPress comes out, plugin developers have to make sure that the plugin will actually work with that new version of WordPress. So even if the plugin doesn't actually need any bugs fixed or new features added, a good plugin developer is still going to make sure that it still works with the newest version of WordPress. So that's going to get updated, and that's going to change the last updated date.
Yes.
So just having someone who pays attention to what their plugin is doing is a really good idea.
Yeah. They'll be more responsive and everything.
And hey, Frank W. in the comments just said what I just said. So yeah. Exactly.
Perfect. So that is one thing to keep your eye out for. So WP Forms is 6 days, Forminator is 6 days, Ninja Forms is 3 weeks ago. Those are all within really good, time frames. So I'm not going to eliminate any of them based on the last updated date because they're all pretty good. The next thing I would want to take a look at is, the ratings. So how does this plugin rate compared to the other ones? This one's 4 stars. This one's 5 stars. This one is 5 stars. And this one is 4.5 stars. Those are all really good ratings. One thing you might want to do is, just kind of check out the reviews, see what they say. Is there anything that you were looking for within the plugin itself that the plugin doesn't have and is in a review? So this one says poor documentation. If you want really good documentation, maybe you will veer away from Contact Form 7 because you want good documentation. that's just something to keep in mind. And so another thing to look out for is the support. How many issues were resolved in the last 2 months? This one has 144 out of 470. This one is 72 out of 91, so that's pretty good. This one's 260 out of 290, which is really good. This one's 13 out of 44, which is really good. Or not really good, sorry.
And I mean, like, having fewer issues might be a good thing as well, because it means there's not a lot that people are, having trouble figuring out, but still.
So there's like two things to look out for: how many people request support, and then how quickly do they respond to support. So if not a lot of people request support, then maybe there's not a lot of issues. And then the other thing is to look for how quickly do they respond. If you're going to need quick response in the future and good customer service, you might want to look out for one of the ones that has a higher resolved rate. So today I'm going to say that I don't want anything that has less than 25%-ish of a resolve rate. So I'm going to eliminate Ninja Forms, and I'm going to eliminate Contact Form 7, because one of my requirements is to have really high response rate on support tickets. And so I've eliminated those 2 plugins, and now I have 2 more plugins to take a look at. And so the final thing that you want to look for, unless I missed something else, is what does their vulnerability landscape look like? One example I wanted to show you, but I forgot, is that, for example, Ninja Forms has a lot of vulnerabilities reported. So you type in Ninja Forms in the search, sorry, I forgot to mention that, and then you click the first one that comes up.
And that's wpscan.com, right?
Yeah, wpscan.com. And then you can find the effects plugin field right here, and then you can click on that plugin, and you can see all the different vulnerabilities that were reported. So for example, Ninja Forms has had a lot. So I would have also eliminated that plugin based on that, just because I don't feel comfortable with the amount of vulnerabilities that have been reported. Even though, their response rate might have been high, I would like to choose something that has a little bit less. And so now I'm down to WP Forms and Forminator. And so I'm going to take a look at those 2 real quick. Forminator.
Now, Chloe, what are you going to consider a lot here when you're looking at vulnerabilities for each of these plugins? So for 2021 at this point, is more than 5 going to be a lot? More than 3?
Yeah, about 5 in a year. Every year is kind of a lot. It's one thing we always like to say is that it's not really, it doesn't matter if a plugin has had vulnerabilities. It does matter how the developer or vendor responds. That's one of the most critical things to look out for, is the response rate of those vulnerabilities. Ninja Forms, for example, has a really good responsible disclosure policy, and they actually have very good security policies in place to handle vulnerabilities. They respond really quickly. Maybe that's why they have so many vulnerabilities reported in the past. So that's something to keep your eye out for as well. However, if there's more than 5 in a plugin in a year, recently, yeah, and you have another plugin option that has 2 reported, you might want to go with the one that has 2 reported. That's what I would personally choose, just because it has less and within the time frame. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think so. I do think that, a pattern of very simple vulnerabilities that keep getting found and fixed does indicate that at some point someone writing code for that plugin was being a bit sloppy. So I mean, I don't feel like there's a way to have a hard and fast rule. And it's true that, more installs means more eyes are on it, which means that they're more likely to be found. Again, if you really want to dive into it, you can click on the descriptions of the vulnerabilities, because it doesn't really matter if I'm an administrator and I can attack myself if no one else can attack me. And there's a bunch of vulnerabilities that are found that are kind of like that.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And so now we're looking at Forminator and WP Forms. So what I'll do again is I'll search for that plugin. I'll go ahead and click the first one that comes up. I'll find the effects plugin area, and then I'll click the link to the plugin, and then I can see all the vulnerabilities that have been reported, at least in this plugin. And so there's only 3 here. One in 2021, one in 2020, and one in 2019. So that looks pretty good to me. I'll also go ahead and check out WP Forms. we'll see how that looks. So they also don't have too many as well, so that's good. So that means that I can choose pretty much either of these two plugins, and I can feel relatively comfortable that they're both pretty secure-ish. I don't want to say that they are fully secure because I can't say that. However, I can feel relatively comfortable that one of these two plugins is going to be okay for my site. And so, the final determining factor can be, what do you need? So does WP Forms offer a feature that Forminator does not offer? Does Forminator offer a feature that Contact Form doesn't offer? And that's going to be dependent on your site. So if both look secure, whatever you narrowed it down to, if they look relatively secure, then your best bet is just picking whatever's better for your site. Today, after I did my own research, I decided I wanted to use Forminator for my site. Super user friendly. It has all the features I need. It looks pretty decently secure. I did a minor code review and it looks pretty good. So this one is my contender for today. This is how I narrowed it down. And so basically we looked at last updated date. Well, I didn't mention the installations. They all had very high installations, so they all have a good amount of eyes looking at them. We looked at the ratings. We looked at the support rate. This one is really high. We looked at the security, how it looks there. And so I feel comfortable installing this. So what we'll do is you'll go back to your WordPress site. You'll go to the plugins area again. You go to add new plugin. You'll search for that plugin you've narrowed it down to. So Forminator. And then we'll go ahead and hit install now. And then it'll take a little bit to install. If you want a little bit of inside scoop, what it's doing is grabbing a zip file of this plugin, and it's taking it and installing it on your site, unextracting it, and then making it be there. That is the simplest way I can explain that. However, we'll wait for this to install. It might take a moment depending on your site.
And you might notice that you end up trying multiple of these plugins. Even when you narrow it down to 3 or 4, you might find that, one of these, whatever you decided on, just doesn't kind of work for you. You don't like the layout. You don't like the way the settings are displayed to you. Maybe it's too complicated, and sometimes you just want something more simple.
Or maybe, as Eos mentioned, someone else bought that plugin recently and replaced the functionality that used to be there with an ad for an upgrade.
Yeah.
Like one of those I think it was one of the other contact forms you reviewed, but
one of the things I wanted to mention too is that if you have the ability to set up a testing site or a staging site, I would always recommend installing these plugins there first, testing them out, seeing if you actually like them after they're installed, and then deciding if you want to move that to your production site, just so you don't add all those like leftover bits that can be added to your production site and such. So you can set up a separate, staging testing site. I would highly recommend doing that to test out your plugins. I believe we did a Wordfence Live episode on how to set up a staging site, so I think Adam can post that in the chat for you all to review if you want to get one of those set up. So we'll go ahead and activate this plugin now, and I'll just give you a quick walkthrough of how it works and why I kind of chose this plugin. So what happens after you install the plugin is it'll create a little like sidebar thingy usually. I don't know the exact terminology for that, but we'll go with sidebar thingy. And so sometimes these will be hidden in settings and in tools. So I just want to mention that because when I first installed plugins and I couldn't find them, I was like, what is going on? So sometimes you might need to look in tools and settings for plugins, and sometimes they'll actually appear up here in the sidebar. So under dashboard or under comments or above posts, more than likely you'll have a little bar basically on the left-hand side. And so we have Forminator here, and then you'll have some sub bars, I guess I'll call them, down here to access, the dashboard for the plugin settings, forms, polls, quizzes, submissions, integration, settings, and then pro if you want pro. Of course, there's always pro. And so we'll go into the dashboard, and I'm going to just show you how to set up a quick form with this real quick. So what you do is you go to forms right here, and you click create. You get a nice little pop-up that asks you if you want to choose a template, which is super nice and friendly. We just want to go with a contact us form. We'll go ahead and click continue. We'll call it our contact form. Create. And so what happens is you have this area to create a form. And so first name, email address, phone number, message. These are the default fields that came with that template. You have the ability to insert additional fields. So you can do phone number, address, website, checkbox, file uploads, all that good stuff. You can customize this however you want. You can go to appearance. You can change the style and everything with this plugin. Behavior, what do you want to happen? You could have a message after it's submitted. You could redirect to a URL. They have this validation stuff, all sorts of good features for contact form. If you just want the simplest contact form, then what you would do is you would install the plugin, click create form, use the contact us template like we just did, and then you can preview it before you publish it. And so this is what the form looks like. And then you can publish it once you're ready. And so what this does is it makes this form official, basically, so you can go ahead and use it on your site. What it'll do is it'll give you a short code that you can copy and add to any post. However, with the WordPress block editor, it is actually significantly easier. So I'll go ahead and show you how to actually add this contact form we just created to your site. So what you'll do is you go to posts and you'll go to add new and you'll say contact me and you can click add block here. And so it's actually one of the first 6 that pop up. But if you need to find it, you can search for form and you can click this first form. And so this is the block for Forminator. And you can pick what contact form you want. And so we're going to choose contact form. And I'm going to go ahead and preview this to make sure I like the way that the form looks. And here we see contact me, first name, enter your first name, email address, phone number, message, all that stuff right there. So we have a good looking contact form and I'm ready to publish this and make it go live. So I've published my first contact form and we can go ahead and view the post. And so now I have created my first contact form with this plugin. Of course, you can enhance it as many different ways as you want. However, that is the simplest way to introduce a contact form with Forminator.
Simple enough, it seems.
Yeah.
Dogwomble also mentioned subtle plug for not installing null plugins due to the risks there, and that reminds me of Ram's recent post. So if you haven't checked that out, please do.
And please don't install null plugins. It's not just that you're cheating plugin authors. It's not just that you might be installing malware on your site. It's that you're not actually getting the premium functionality. You're just getting basically the free plugin, but you're paying for it somehow or another.
Yeah, maybe with malware, right?
Maybe with malware, maybe by paying, like $5 to some site that says you're getting a premium plugin, but you're not. Anyways, enough of that rant. I think we were going to cover SEO plugins, weren't we?
Let's take a look.
All right. So let's see. Let me open up my... I've got my demo window going as well. And so why would you want an SEO plugin? Well, you want people to visit your website, right? And we're assuming that, you want the right people to visit your website. If you're selling widgets, you don't necessarily want people searching for doodads visiting your website unless you also sell doodads. So it's not just about the volume of traffic, it's about the volume of relevant traffic. This is one of the biggest rabbit holes you can go down, but SEO stands for search engine optimization. So that means you're trying to optimize how search engines see you, search engines being like Google or Bing or Yandex if you are in Russia. So there's a few options out there for SEO plugins. I was actually going to demo Rank Math because I really like how user-friendly it is, even though I found a vulnerability in them last year. They responded pretty well. But it turns out that my test hosting account doesn't have some of the requisite stuff installed. This is another reason why you might need to do some trial and error. So Yoast is kind of the default. I review their code pretty regularly, and they take security and best practices super seriously, and they're installed on a lot of websites, and they stay up to date like what appears to be a viciously demanding update cycle. So people mostly like them. People like them a lot. They've resolved a lot of issues in their support forum. Let me check how many vulnerabilities Yoast has had recently. Wow, they have, I mean, they used to have a bunch, but they haven't had one since 2019. So, yeah, pretty secure. And again, there are other options. I was actually going to install Rank Math, but it won't work on my site. So, I'm going to add Yoast to my site. So, and I mean, you can search for the plugin you decided on, or you can just search for the keyword you're looking for. Click Install Now. And activate. And okay, so almost every SEO plugin, its primary purpose is to give you feedback on the content you're writing, to let you know if it looks decent for search engines. So let's say I want to, write a post about kittens. There's a lot of search results for kittens on the internet. Maybe I should make it more specific. Cute kittens in hats.
There we go.
There we go. So there we go. That's a lot more specific. So I'm going for, cute kittens in hats. That's what I'm trying to focus. That's what I'm trying to get search results for. So one of the things you generally want to do is, and it'll give you a bunch of recommendations and not enough content. Okay, so I should probably start writing about cute kittens in hats. And eventually Yoast will start giving you more feedback on stuff like how easy it is to read, whether or not you're using passive voice, and there's other things where you might want to add a description of this post is about cute kittens in hats. And all of these are basically signals that get sent out to search engines to figure out, what the post is about and whether or not it's relevant to people that are searching for cute kittens in hats. Maybe they're not really, if they're searching for cute kittens in boots, it's not going to be nearly as relevant. So, but 90% of SEO plugins is just judging what you write and telling you how good it is relative to what you're trying to get search engines to pick up. Now, writing good content is pretty much, I want to say, one of the biggest things about search engine optimization, but there's also website performance, and that's where caching plugins come in, right, Scott?
Absolutely. We're going to take a look here at a number of different caching plugins. And, in support, we see a lot of diagnostics come in. We see a lot of different cache plugins come over as well. So are you seeing my screen there, Rand?
I am.
Oh, good, yeah.
Okay, so here we're on our dashboard, and I'm going to walk you through the process again here. But first, let's start with why a site needs a caching plugin. So sites rely on caching because, in most cases, you're going to notice that it's going to reduce the load on your server and ultimately increase your site's performance. So that's win-win. These plugins are going to cache your WordPress posts and your pages as static files. So these static files are then served to your users, which reduces the process load on the server. And this, again, will improve performance drastically in some cases. And, when it comes to serving content to your viewers, maybe it's just cat pictures, maybe you're selling cat treats or cat toys on your site. A well-optimized site and a fast site is going to result in a better user experience. It's going to result in more sales, so on and so forth. So let's go over here. And again, remember, we're going to the plugins section over here on the side. You're going to go, well, initially you can just click on plugins. You're going to see what you have initially here, and then you can click add new. So once you're in this section, we can search. And if we just put in cache, we're going to see some good options here. Again, going through our list, we're looking at things like the recent reviews here, and across the board here, we're seeing excellent reviews. We're seeing 2+ million and 1+ million active installs all across the board for these top 4. And then there's a little bit of a drop off here. We see WP Super Cache 2+ million. So things are looking good there. Now, one that I see come over a lot in diagnostics and that I do not see a lot of issues with is W3 Total Cache. Now, as Chloe mentioned earlier, if you're looking for the most simple cache solution, you may go with Fastest Cache. But from what I've seen in customer support, W3 Total Cache has looked well. I haven't seen it conflict with much on our end, and it offers a lot for your site. So some of the things that we're looking at here again, when was this last updated? We're seeing 3 weeks ago, which is great to see. And then it tells you which WordPress version is required, as well as what it's compatible with. 5.8, I believe that was last week that came out. We covered that on Wordfence Live. So if you're trying to get up to date with those features, check that out. So we're good there. Double check your PHP version, make sure everything looks good there. This is 5.6 or higher. If you're not at 5.6 or higher, that is something to take a look at right away. And then we see the active installations here, again, 1+ million. So I'm going to go with W3 Total Cache here. Now we'll start the installation, and as we do that, let's head over. So this is a little different than what Ram had seen with Yoast. We do see there's been a few vulnerabilities recently, but prior to that, just here and there, 2019 and then 2016. So Chloe, to you, is that looking fairly reasonable?
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, and again, Ram, these caching plugins, there's a lot of good solutions here, and there's good secure solutions. But when it comes to caching, sometimes less is going to be more, right? You don't want to be layering these.
Absolutely. It got brought up that if you're using a CDN, a content distribution network, and if that comes with its own caching, then, caching on using a plugin is probably not ideal, because then if you change anything, you have to basically what's called purge all of your caches, and the more places you have stuff cached, the more likely it is that you'll forget. And then if you change something, it might not show up on your actual site for however long it takes for all of that to just sort of bubble through. So it's one of those things where just be super conservative with what you cache and where you cache. And if you start seeing anything on your site acting weird, turn off your caching plugin, because that's the first thing you should try.
A good first place to look if you're seeing issues, especially after activating a new caching plugin. So, and I see in chat we have a number of recommendations for cache solutions. So again, as with all of this list that we're going over, you might not need a plugin for all of this, and your experience here may differ. So, try a few out if you have to and see what works best on your site. And again, you can use Fast or Slow to check that as well. So first off, we've installed and we've activated the plugin. Now, if we look on the left side here, we have our link. Now, sometimes, as it was mentioned, you may see this under Tools. You may see it under Settings. In this case, ours is right here, and that's under Performance. So the one thing I liked about W3 Total Cache is if you're brand new to WordPress, you're not sure how to set some of these plugins up, there's a pretty cool setup guide right here. And I'll show you that. So when we click on this, it's going to tell you kind of what you need to do, and it's going to show you with the numbers what is changing on your site. So as it says, W3 Total Cache provides many options to help your website perform faster. Now, as we said, you might not want to go haywire and go through here and enable every option. You might want to start with the minimum, and there are a lot of options in this plugin. So let's start with the first thing, and this is the page cache. So this is going to help you speed up your site with the time to first byte using the page cache. And Ram, that sounds familiar because I believe we measure that on Fast or Slow, right?
Oh, why, yes, we do. That's one of the big things that, if you run your site against fasterslow.com, it'll give you a speed score, and time to first byte is one of the biggest things that changes that score.
So whenever we click on these buttons here, so for page cache, which is our first option here, we're seeing, what is being reduced here, and we see an 80% reduction here using the disk storage engine rather than using nothing at all. So, that would be fine to move forward with that. Now, some of these you will notice it's not recommended that you use. So you may see that in the tooltips here as we go forward. So we do see there's a 5% reduction here in our database cache here. But as it's recommended here, by default, this feature is disabled. So
We've seen that feature break stuff too.
yeah, and as I was going to say, as Ram mentioned earlier, and as we've talked about, you might want to start off with a little less. So if it's recommending to keep this disabled, maybe try testing it with it disabled, try testing it with enabled, and again, a backup first would be an excellent idea, and of course, doing this on your staging environment would be a better idea. So keep those things in mind. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through each of these and you're going to look and see what the changes are. And of course, you can always come back to this setup guide down here on the bottom and go through. And if you hit the button multiple times, you're going to notice that the numbers are changing. So it's loading the page and it's showing you the time differences there. So you can do that on the page cache if you want to check it multiple times and just see what the average is that you're getting. You have the option here for lazy load. So if you're really looking at your site's performance and you want to get an idea of what's going on, you may try with it enabled, you may try it with it disabled, and it's going to depend on how many cute cat pictures you have on the site, right, Ram? If you have 100 of them, that's going to be a little different.
You absolutely want to cache your cute cat pictures, especially if you've got like a CDN or something. That's a great way to deliver your cat pictures, but that's off topic.
And the same goes with image optimization. That's something that you should be doing. We covered last week, right, Ram, with 5.8, the WebP technology, and we showed the differences that you can get there with your site's optimization.
That is correct. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but Dion Vozov brought something up, and that is that, every time you make a change with any of these, test it, because that way you'll kind of get an idea for what everything does. That's like how you learn to use a plugin is, make a change, see what it changes on, your front of site, see how it impacts your visitor experience. That's a huge part of, getting comfortable with using these plugins.
So again, we took a look at all of the different things that we mentioned earlier in the show. We want to look at the customer support for the plugin. That's one thing I missed for our plugin here with W3, though I did check it out yesterday, and it looks like the plugin author and support are active and answering questions very regularly in the forum. It looked like all of their support messages had replies to them for W3. So that's a good thing to see. You're looking to see how many installations, how regularly it's updated. So you install that, you activate it, and then we just went through the setup guide right here on the left side. Last thing I want to show you is you have some good options right here at the top, and this is right on your dashboard page for the plugin itself. You can do a compatibility check. This is something that's going to look at your PHP version, your FTP functionality, so on and so forth. So this is a good way to tell if your site's configuration is set up well for W3 Total Cache. So a good thing to check out there. And then you have some other important options, such as the ability to empty all the cache right here at the top of the page. So that's something you may find yourself doing as you make changes to your site, or maybe as you test the optimization and performance of the site as well.
Well, Scott, you know what they say, cache rules everything around me.
And you could say cats as well, right? We've
Yep.
demonstrated that here on Wordfence Live as well. So we looked at a number of things here. What else do we want to mention here when you're looking for these plugins? You don't want to take any single one of these things we've talked about and just run with that, right? You want to look at multiple things and then also see how your site works with these plugins and how comfortable you are using it, because good support doesn't mean a lot if you don't need it and if you're not comfortable using the plugin or it's not working well.
And I mean, if a lot of the plugins features are premium only, then you're likely going to get excellent support if you have the premium version of the plugin. And I mean, we do our very best to offer excellent support to our free users, as you can see if you look at our plugin stats. But not every plugin's gonna do that. Not every plugin's gonna be able to invest the time and people to offer support to their free users when a lot of their users are premium users. So
Renata mentions having a bad record with caching plugins. That goes back to what Ram and I had talked about earlier. If you run into an issue with the site, that should be something you're checking out first, and you have the options there in W3 to clear it out. And of course, you can deactivate and see how things go from there. Chloe, do we want to take a look at good plugin hygiene, or is there something else that we want to take a look at before we move on here?
We can just mention that real quick. So good plugin hygiene. So making sure that, so after you've installed your plugins, you picked them all out and everything, you have to maintain your plugins. It's not just, you plug it in and it's good forever. You have to make sure that you're maintaining them, because bug fixes are made. So updates are pushed to plugin, so the code is updated. And so basically there's bug fixes, there's feature enhancements, there's vulnerability fixes, all sorts of good stuff. So you have to make sure that you're actively maintaining those plugins and making sure that you keep them up to date. If there's a security vulnerability that's patched, then you should update as soon as possible, whereas other things you might be okay taking a little less time to update. Let me go ahead and show you real quick how you can figure that out. I'm going to go and find a change log real quick, just to show you how you can see if a vulnerability has been patched in a plugin, so you can have that in your tool belt. Give me one moment.
So we covered a lot today, Ram, and there's just as we showed earlier with the repository, there's pretty much a plugin out there for everything, and but we don't recommend going overboard either.
I mean, there's really two schools of thoughts. There's the idea that you should use as few plugins as possible for all your needs. So having a full-featured plugin can sometimes be a good choice. But there's, also the school of thought that, if you only need one thing, it's better to pick a plugin that does that one thing and does it well. So, we try to balance that. We try not to add too much, feature bloat to our own plugin, but we try to make sure that we cover all of the essentials. But a lot of it just comes down to personal preference. Like, what are you looking for? How many things do you need a plugin to do for your site?
So real quickly, let me go ahead and show you. If you go to the plugins area, you'll have a little thing here if a plugin is out of date that says update now. You can also go to dashboard updates, and this is how you'll know if a plugin needs an update. And if you're running Wordfence, it'll let you know as well that you need a plugin update. But you can find them under the updates tab. It'll be under plugins or themes down here, and it'll give you the option to update. So that's something to make sure that you're being aware of with plugins, is that they're up to date and that you can update them. And then to look for a security fix, you can go back to the plugin repository, search for the plugin that needs updating. And then what you'll want to do is go to development, this tab right here, right there. And you'll want to go to the changelog, and you want to see what happened in the last update. So in 3.5.7, there was a bug fix. We don't see any security fixes there. So in theory, you don't need to update immediately. However, I recommend staying as up to date as possible. However, if it's not a security fix, you have a little bit more time to test it out and make sure that it's not going to break anything on your site. Yes?
One thing to remember is that sometimes plugin developers won't tell you if there's a security fix, or they will outright lie about what a fix was for. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, so I like to recommend keeping everything as up to date as possible. However, I understand that in some cases some people would like to take time. So it's a juggling act there. But this is where you can take a look to see if there's a security fix, if the developer was responsible and disclose those details. So that's just something to keep in mind. And yeah, so make sure that you're keeping your plugins up to date, and then make sure that you're not using too many plugins on your site. It's easy to just, keep installing plugins and plugins and plugins, and then you end up with like 100 plugins and you don't need half of them.
I mean, it's going to depend a lot on like how your site is set up. If you're running an e-commerce site, and I hate to say it, but WooCommerce really is kind of the only game in town, but there's going to be a lot of plugins you're going to need to add on to that. Then each one might only do one small thing. So it might be okay to have like, a couple dozen of those, because each of one of them only does one small thing. But if you have like 5 giant plugins that all do the same thing, that's not so good.
Yeah, So it's a balancing act because with every plugin you install, it could be a different developer with a different coding style with the potential to introduce vulnerabilities. So from a security standpoint, you'd want to reduce the amount of plugins you have installed to reduce your attack surface, but at the same time, it's understandable to have multiple plugins, like a lot of plugins installed to do certain features, because WordPress, and that's one of the great things about plugins. So just keep it in mind and make sure that you're kind of balancing that a little bit. But yeah, you can have a lot of plugins installed and be okay, but just keep in mind that it can impact the security of your site. It's not always going to, but it can, and that's why you have Wordfence installed to protect you against those vulnerabilities. And so one of the final things there is, what is the last good good plugin hygiene recommendation we have, Ram?
The last plugin, well, did we already cover why we should always remove unused plugins?
That's it. That's the last one. Yeah. We did cover that earlier, so it's just reiterating it again. Make sure that you are uninstalling plugins that you don't use, and then just making sure that you remove utility plugins that you use once and you're not going to use again for another maybe 6 months or something. Just don't leave it there. Just reinstall it again in the future. Yeah, so make sure that you're keeping your plugins up to date, remove unused plugins, and try to minimize the amount of plugins you're using from a security standpoint. However, it is normal to have a lot of plugins installed at the same time.
Use as many as you need, but no more.
Yeah.
And I think it's time for our swag winners, isn't it?
It is. So the swag question for the day was, what type of plugin is Wordfence? And of course, Wordfence is completely security focused. That was the first thing that we covered earlier. It's essential to have some form of security on the site or on the server. That's something, at WordCamps we get asked a lot. Do I need security? And it's absolutely going to be essential there. So here's our swag winners. We have Tim, Pete, Kristen, Renata, and Brandon. Congrats to you 5 for correctly answering, and I'm guessing you answered very, very quickly there. So congrats. We will be contacting you and sending out the swag, and I believe we have an adorable picture there.
All right.
Yes, that is absolutely adorable. I see we had a question from Jamie about Wordfence email blog and asking if we generally alert when there's a security issue with a plugin. So if I'm understanding correctly, that could be our mailing list or from the plugin itself. We definitely alert when a plugin's out of date, if we find any malicious code.
Yeah. So if we find a vulnerability, we will send out an email to our mailing list when we publish the article about it. If there's a big enough vulnerability, like the thing with WooCommerce a couple weeks ago, we will keep our readership up to date on what's going on with it, how we protected our users from it. If there's vulnerabilities discovered by other people, we might write firewall rules for it. And for all of these, the WordPress scanner is going to let you know if you have a vulnerable version of a plugin installed, regardless of whether or not we'll send out an alert for it on our mailing list. Which again, we usually do those for the really big vulnerabilities and the ones we find. But the scanner is going to find out. Even the free version of the scanner, by the way, is going to tell you if you've got a vulnerable version of a plugin installed. So good reason to scan pretty regularly, huh?
Mm-hmm.
A couple more things to mention, going right off of that, if you want to be alerted whenever Ram or Chloe or the rest of our threat intel team finds anything in a plugin, if you want to be the first to know, you want to be on our wordfence.com mailing list. You're going to find that right in the footer of the wordfence.com homepage. That'll give you a head start if there's anything major out there. If you're still a free user of the Wordfence plugin, that's going to let you know, hey, you need to go update or you need to switch this plugin out. Get it off the site for a little while. If you're a premium user, that's letting you know that we have a new role out there protecting you. So definitely good to be on that list. We're also hiring, right, Chloe, Ram? We have a number of positions open right now. You want to go to defiant.com/employment there, and you're going to see what we have open. Let me check and see. We got a bookkeeper. We got a senior researcher for website performance. That looks to be fast or slow related. So if you haven't checked out fast or slow, go get an idea of how your site's performing. Ram, is that 18 locations around the world?
Why, yes, it is.
And it's free to use, which is very nice as well. We also have senior operations for security engineer. AWS is required for that. We have a QA engineer role if you want to work alongside RAM. You spend some time QAing. We're always QAing something here. One of those things was Wordfence Central. If you are using Wordfence on a number of your sites, if you want to monitor all of that from one place, see the security of your sites in one place, you can do that from Wordfence Central. Adding your sites is easy to do, right? It's as simple as clicking on a button, and RAM, that's for free and premium users.
Why, yes, it is. Wordfence Central is a free service. We'll send you out alerts if you're tired of getting, alerts from a bunch of sites. We'll just send them all. We can send them out by SMS, to Discord, to Slack, by email, however you want them, and they can all run through Central if you'd like. So, yeah.
We appreciate everybody stopping by. If you haven't already, head over to the blog, check out Ram's recent post on null plugins, since we're on the theme of plugins here, and get an idea of what we've found there. We will be back next Tuesday with another interesting topic, and we hope that we catch you all here. Jamie, Michael, Kristen, Les, we appreciate you stopping by for the day and spending your time with us. Ram, Chloe, anything to add before we head out here?
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe.
We appreciate it, everybody.
Did I do that right?
You did. Hit the thumbs
right.
up button below the video. You can hit the bell and the subscribe button for the hat trick. Then you'll be notified whenever we go live or when we post a new video, which we do here and there. And it's always something to help you out and help you secure your site. So we appreciate it, everybody. We'll be back next Tuesday. Have a great rest of the week. And until then, be safe. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wordfence. We have better hackers.